Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name's Robbie. I've come from Silicon Valley, where I live and work, but I'm obviously a Kiwi, hence the accent. What I wanted to talk about today was how you can sort of supercharge growth for your startup or for your business by basically treating the new people that sign up for your product the way that they want to be treated, and really ensuring that you can give them the right experience. That means that they'll stay with your product, they'll retain better, and you'll grow faster. Just to give a little bit of context for why I'm talking about this, I started in New Zealand. I went up to Berkeley, where I studied, which was my first entry point to the US. From there, I sold imaginary unicorns on Farmville, the Facebook game that you may be familiar with at Zynga. I also spent some time at SurveyMonkey, where I ran the mobile team. SurveyMonkey is one of the kind of OGs of the consumer software business. And I'm currently at Intercom, where I look after our revenue and some of our first use experiences. So I want to talk very briefly about Intercom. Do we have any customers in the room at all? Yes, nice to see that. If you're not a customer, we'd be glad to talk to you afterwards as well. But Intercom is the way that internet businesses talk to their customers. It's also known as that little chat thing in the bottom right corner of websites that you may have seen. Now, we'll sell to sales and marketing support teams and help businesses build better relationships and grow faster. And we've been very successful doing that. We're really lucky. So we were founded 7 years ago. We now have over 30,000 paying customers and a valuation in excess of $1 billion. To get there, we've had to take a whole lot of complexity in our product. So what started as a single thing that was very simple has morphed into a range of different SKUs, messages, inbox, custom bots. And what's happened is we've seen that customers that sign up for Intercom, that start using our product, got really confused. They weren't sure how to do what it was that they wanted to do when they signed up, and then they dropped off. We saw that that was increasing. Our activation rate, as it is often called, was dropping. Now, we spent a whole lot of time looking really deeply into this, and what we were able to do is in some cases double the rate at which when new customers came in, they actually stuck around with us. They went from trialists into paying customers. This can have a huge impact on your business. And what I want to say today is I think often we kind of don't think about onboarding enough or think enough about that part in the process. You spend tons of time and energy, blood, sweat, tears, venture capital, getting new customers to come to your business to try out your product. But then what happens is very quickly you'll see more of them than you would like actually drop off. They never really get to use your product in a meaningful way. And as a result, you never get any value from them. What I want to talk about today is how not to do that. And that's going to be in 3 parts. First, what is a first use experience? Secondly, how do you build, who are we building a first use experience for is number 2. And then third, how do you build a great first use experience? So first, what is a first use experience? What am I talking about? Well, in general, I think of onboarding as the process of taking a brand new user of your digital product all the way to a highly engaged power user. That's a journey that can take a long time. There's a whole lot of configuration often that has to be done to products. And you may need to add friends, upload user lists. It can take a fairly long time. Today I'm focused just on the very early part of that, the first use experience, which basically is when someone comes to your website and kind of signs up, enters an email address. What happens after that? That's really what we're focusing on. So first, who are these sort of first use experiences for? What are we talking about? And the reason I want to talk about this is that people that buy software are a little bit different to people that buy everything else. And here's why. Cast your mind back to 1991, Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a great film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you can't be bothered going and seeing it, just look at Alec Baldwin's clip on YouTube. It's this incredible, it's an incredible piece of theatre. But in this sort of famous speech, the whole sort of premise of the scene is that Alec Baldwin is a sort of really successful salesperson, and he comes to this underperforming sales organization to give them a pep talk. He's basically berating them. He's telling them they're no good at their jobs, he's way better than them, and he's condescending to them. In the process of condescending, he explains something that's so obvious that it's kind of insulting to mention it. And this is this process of AIDA. This is the way we're told people buy things. First, you need someone's attention. They've got to be aware of your product. Then they've got to be interested in your product. And at some point, they make a decision to buy your product, and then they've got to act. They've got to act and kind of go through with the purchase process. AIDA. That's how you buy most things. When I went and bought a coffee this morning, first I was aware I wanted coffee. I was sort of really interested in it. I made a decision to go and purchase that coffee and then took action. I gave them my money and got a coffee back. It's how you initially bought computers. It's how you bought software even. Back in the day, you went to Harvey Norman or whatever, took the software down off the shelf and bought it. But that's changed. Most digital products these days are not bought this way at all. Because what happens is all these products are either free to use, or they have a free trial, or they're a subscription business. The whole purpose of a marketing website, all the CTAs drive towards try it now, sign up free, get going. We just push people into products. And what that means is that the customers don't have a whole lot of skin in the game, nor do they necessarily have a whole lot of context about what your product does. It's not AIDA, it's something much harder to say, EAD, or something like that. But what happens is basically people have sort of you've got their attention, there'll be some sort of interest in your product, and then they're taking action. They're in it, they're signing up, they haven't made a decision to buy. And that's the real difference. What that means is, and I would never refer to Intercom customers this way, but all users are lazy, vain, and selfish in their first 15 seconds. This is a quote from Scott Belsky, who's the Chief Product Officer at Adobe, who make Photoshop and a range of other kind of creative tools. I'd highly recommend you follow him. He's a very smart guy. But what he's really getting at here is this whole idea of the switch, right? People aren't highly invested when they go to try your product. They just sort of want to have a look around. And so what that means is it's incumbent on you to prove to them really quickly, to show them value in a very short space of time, because they haven't got a whole lot of skin in the game. They don't want a big product tour or to do a whole lot of configuration. You want to go to show them really quickly, hey, this is going to do what you say it will. So the logical thing to say is, well, just shortest path to value. Let's build a really simple kind of onboarding process and get them to get the value of our product really quickly. It's hard for two reasons. One, it can be a little unclear what the value of your product is sometimes, even to sort of understand for yourself. But secondly, the shortest path to value often isn't short. Unless you're something like Twitter, where the product is really just consuming a bunch of content, you normally need to kind of get people to add friends or sign up, create some content, upload a user list, install some JavaScript. There's kind of like this whole long process that it takes to get people from a new user to actually experiencing the value of your product. This is why onboarding is hard, and this is why you lose a whole lot of those people that come to your website and sign up, because they're not particularly invested, your product's really complicated, and there's a long kind of process that it takes for them to see value, and so they don't see value in that process. And that's what we're trying to resolve. The way you resolve that is a great first use experience. Okay, so what makes a great first use experience? I'm going to put it to you that a great first use experience is one that really quickly proves to new users that your product does the job that they are hiring it for. Whole lot of words in there, so I'm going to unpack each of them. As we go through it, I want to share 4 principles that I found really effective for building products that actually stick and keep people around. So the first one here is does the job that we're hiring it for. And what I want to say to you today is really focus your user experience on the job that your customers want to do, not the features in your product. What does that mean? The idea here is that your customers are hiring your product to do some kind of a job, right? People don't want to drill, they want holes. Another way to frame this is sort of the benefit that customers get. And this benefit isn't always sort of super obvious. It's not like email marketing, that's not a benefit. The benefit's something much more around communicating with customers, and even then it's probably very specific. So an example of this from a little piece of Intercom's product that at least used to exist was our map. So Intercom is a platform that allows businesses to communicate with their customers. When people come to your website, they can start chats, we store their information, and then you can send them emails, you can deal with them through customer support. There's a whole sort of customer life cycle there. And as part of it, we had this feature which was a map, and we'd show you kind of where all your customers were, and you could sort of filter it and scan around and all that sort of stuff. That's the feature. But what's the job that this map does? Why does this map even exist? When we talked to customers and looked at what they did, this thing is about impressing people, actually. The job that the map does is I want to impress potential investors, I want to impress potential customers, and I want to impress random people on Twitter. But the purpose of the map was like impressing people. That's how people used it, right? And kind of What that means, the job to be done for this map is I want to impress people, potential customers, by showing them how many customers I have. That's the benefit that your customers want to get from that. How does Intercom help with that? Well, you can step one piece back from that and say, well, the map looks really great. You know, that's how we help you impress people. It's also really, really easy to share. Obviously, there are features within Intercom that map to these things really specifically, right? There's this beautiful UI, it's live and animated, it's very easy to tweet, you can hide sensitive information, there's a full screen mode. Now what we've got actually is something that could be a first use experience. If I'm trying to pitch you on the benefit of the map, I don't want to say, hey, there's a map, you can upload your customers to it, you can zoom in and out, you can filter things. None of that's going to help because the job that you most likely want to do with it is impress people. And if I want to show you that I'm going to help you impress people, the map's beautiful, it's easy to use, you can tweet it easily, we can kind of remove sensitive information, right? So what you might think you would do as an onboarding experience or a first use experience for the map looks really, really different to actually if you talk to customers, understand how they use your product, in this case the map, and then sort of start to map out how your product really delivers on the job to be done there. So that's why I say focus on the job and not the features of your product. So going back to this kind of the sentence about what a great first use experience is, it quickly proves to new users. Who are new users? It seems obvious, right? But not necessarily, because for many products, there's a number of people that use them or are involved in the buying process, especially if you're a B2B product. And what I'd say to you is make sure you onboard everybody. So again, from our personal experience as Intercom, one of the groups of people that we sell to is salespeople. You can use Intercom for live chat on your website to convert more of the people that come on your website to leads, and then sort of sell them as customers. Seems simple enough. But what is the job to be done there? It's something like turn people on your, who are visiting your website into customers. But it even varies by the people that are buying it. Because if you talk to a marketing leader, they're going to say, oh, Intercom helps me generate more leads and does it in a really on-brand way. If I'm trying to create a first-use experience for marketing people, I go, hey, look how branded it is. You can change this and change that and upload your logo. And you'll get lots and lots of leads through it. But if you talk to a salesperson, they actually think about the world a little differently. Sales leaders know that not all leads are the same, and what they want is pipeline. It's not leads, it's quality leads, and also they want it to plug into all the sort of reporting tools they have, and they don't want to waste their team's time. Sales leaders are really worried about the quality of kind of the work that they're doing. And so the sort of features I would want to show to them are things like, oh yes, we plug into Salesforce, and here's some routing rules, and you can qualify people in this way. Actually quite different to the marketing person, even though it seems like it's a very similar thing that we're doing. Finally, there's the salespeople. Obviously, a whole lot of people use Intercom. They're interested primarily in that sweet commish. And so the best thing that I can do is get right out of their way and say, hey, look, here's where your customers are. Here's where you talk to them. Have at it. So again, 3 different people, quite a different sort of customer experience. Another product that does this well, like really practically, is Box. So Box, they're a cloud sort of storage process. And here's a page from their onboarding experience. And you see that they're sort of asking, what do you want to do with Box? Do you just want to sync a few files? Or are you interested in enterprise-grade security? As you might imagine, if you're an enterprise buyer of software, you don't care about how quick the sync is. You care about the fact that it's SOC 2 compliant and that you can kind of integrate with your single sign-on solution and a range of that stuff. It's a really different first-use experience that you should have for these kind of lazy, selfish, and vain people who are just kind of looking around in each of those cases. So Box are doing this well, and I'd encourage you to do a very similar thing. So we've talked about how we want to focus on the job to be done, and we want to onboard everyone. What do I mean when I'm saying proving? Surely proving is kind of easy, right? Like, we just want to get people to have the experience of value. As we mentioned, often software products are pretty complicated, and the process to actually get the value can take a long time. That is time that you do not have. And so if you cannot actually give people the experience of value, try and show them. That's a really underutilized tool I've found. More broadly, range of ways you can prove things. You can do it for them have the experience. That first Uber ride that you take, there's no better way to prove the value of Uber. But the reality is there's a long series of steps that you have to take to get there. Often on a marketing website, we'll tell people, our product's great, it'll totally solve all your problems. It's just not that compelling. In the middle, there's this kind of showing thing, right? Where we think about what's the way that we can kind of make the value that we provide, the job to be done, really sort of visceral, have people have a taste of it. And the way that I kind of like to think about it is this idea of a minimum viable aha. It's like, what can we kind of show to people in this really sort of small way that will help them go, I get it. I see what this product's about. I see how that's going to help me. Airbnb do this really well. So Airbnb obviously is a marketplace where people with space to rent out can connect with people that want to rent that space. Basically, have a stranger in your house. If you are renting out your house on Airbnb, the value that they're providing to you is something like, I want to make more money out of my spare room, or I'm going to be away for the weekend, I want to make some cash out of that. That's the job to be done. They're not there for some sort of marketplace, interaction type thing. Now, the whole process to show you that value is probably when the dollars hit your bank account. And there's a long process to get there. You've got to sign up, upload photos of your house, you've got to fill out a profile, you've got to wrestle with the calendar thing, you've got to talk to prospective renters. It's a long, long, long process, and it's far too much to ask of people that are really just signing up. And so what Airbnb do is they sort of find ways to show you the benefit that they provide. Because if you look here, all I've done is said I'm in San Francisco, and I have a house. 2 clicks. And all of a sudden, $3,054 pops up there. It's right at the bottom, below the buttons, and it's right by the big kind of pink CTA. It feels really real, right? All of a sudden, I can almost taste that money in my bank account. It's like, here's the thing. Here's the reason I signed up, and it feels very specific and very real. Took no effort on my part as a new user, but they've managed to make the benefit all of a sudden feel much more tangible in a very simple way. Those are the kinds of first use experiences that get people all the way through them, and those are the ones that get people to sign up and stay with your product and retain, and that's what helps you grow your business. Final piece here. When I talked about this great first use experiences, I said quickly, right? That feels really important because as we mentioned at the start, a lot of these people who are signing up aren't super invested, they don't have a whole lot of context for your product, and so they're not going to spend a whole lot of time. And what I'd advise you to do is remove all non-essential friction from your sign-up experience. This is probably something that you're going to test through, but likely you'll find there's a whole lot of parts of any onboarding process, any sign-up process that you go through that don't actually add any value. Here's a test that I like to use. At any step, anything, any piece in the first use experience, ask yourself, is this quick and easy? And does it help to prove that my product does the job that the customer wants to do? Does it sort of add some kind of understanding or some kind of aha? Is it a critical step in the process? If it's not, get rid of it. When I say get rid of it, you've got 2 options. You can remove it or you can simplify it. When I say remove, I mean remove it from where it is. So you may take the step out completely because you go, you know what, this actually isn't really critical that people choose the color of their background as part of the first use experience. Let's just get them a little bit further through. Or you might say, you know what, sign up and adding a profile photo, let's say, could happen a little bit later. It's got to happen, but it doesn't need to be the first thing that people do. So Typeform actually did this really well. They're an online survey company, and what they realized is, hey, look, our differentiation as a survey product is that it's really easy to create surveys. And so what they did is they got rid of sign up. If you went to the Typeform website at the time, you'd go in, you'd click a button, and you'd already be creating a survey. They kind of gave you that experience of how easy it was to create a survey up front because they realized that adding an email address and typing in a password doesn't add any value. It doesn't help you understand better what the product does, and it's just friction that's in the way. And so what they did is they moved sign up further in, and once you'd started to create your survey, they'd say, hey, do you want to save this thing? And you say, yes, I would, Typeform, and then you kind of sign up to save it. So that may not work for you necessarily, but that's the kind of way you want to start to be thinking, to say, you know what, creating a password is hard work, and it doesn't actually add any value. Other option you've got is to simplify, right? And so simplify means maybe we can use some smart defaults, right? Any way that we can reduce complexity and to take something which is a whole lot of configuration into a couple of clicks counts as simplification. So what it could be is you ask customers a couple of questions and you recommend a template, or you set a whole series of kind of defaults and say, you know what, you don't need to necessarily do this. We found this worked really well at Intercom. So we launched a new product called Custom Bots. Basically what this does is it allows you to create a chat bot. It's a very powerful kind of product, but it's pretty complicated to create a chat bot. You've got to figure out how the conversation's got to go. You want to understand how chatbots work. You've got to have all these sort of flows, buttons, questions. It's a fair amount of work, and it's a lot to ask of people. And so what we did is we created templates. We said with one click, say, do you want to use this chatbot to onboard new users? Or do you want to use this chatbot to move free customers to paying customers? And then from that, we would populate a whole lot of stuff. So as opposed to having to build a whole process, we kind of populated all the copy, we built all the sort of relationships, which you could then edit. We dramatically reduced how much you need to understand. And now about half of the customers that start with this particular piece of the product go through this path. They choose to start with a template. That's what simplifying complexity looks like, and turning something that used to take half an hour, a whiteboard, a whole bunch of kind of ideation, into 2 or 3 clicks and a little bit of typing. So if you want to keep more customers that kind of come to your website and start to use your product, you've got to build a great first use experience. The way that you do that is you make sure that you quickly prove to new users that your product does the job that you sort of say it will. The way I've found really successful in doing that is to focus on the job to be done and not just the features in your product. Don't take them through a brand new tour. Consider all the different people that sign up for your product and really tailor experiences to what they would want to do. If your product's complex and you can't show the benefit really quickly, if you can't actually provide the benefit really quickly, find ways to show, make it visceral, make people sort of feel that, hey, we're making progress, and motivate them through that whole process. And then finally, be ruthless. Remove all the parts of non-essential friction and really kind of don't stand in the way of your customers understanding what your product does better and getting value from it. That's pretty much me. Thanks very much. Yeah. Happy to take a few questions. Also happy to chat to people afterwards. So.
Do you split test on your onboarding, like different onboarding ideas?
Yes, absolutely.
Extensively, like how much do you do that?
Oh, so the thing I would say is split testing is really good for validating something, but the reality is unless you're Google with like a whole lot of people and a whole lot of time and a whole lot of traffic, split tests are expensive because you've got to build them, and they're expensive because they take a lot of time, because especially with new user experiences, a 2 or 3% change can make a massive difference to your business. That typically falls almost straight to the bottom line. So small differences are really worth getting, but small differences are hard to pick up and take time. So you can run split tests, but it's almost the worst way to figure stuff out. We'll try and really figure things out by deeply understanding customer problems first, doing a whole lot of user research, and then once you're pretty much sure, you'll just be confident, or you will give yourself confidence to move forward a particular path by split testing it, but you don't kind of split test into necessarily what the right answer is. Yeah. Yeah, sir.
I know you guys have like the JavaScript installation for like chart
Yes.
and whatnot, and in the early days that I've read previously that was like a big sort of blockage. Are you able to speak about how you have addressed that over time?
Yeah, exactly. So the what I had kind of referred to in this process is initially we thought, hey, shortest path to value. Let's just get people to install Intercom on their site, put the JavaScript in there, then they'll figure it out. For our very earliest customers who are kind of tech early adopters, it kind of worked. But as time's gone on, they're like, whoa, what's happening here? And if you're anything more than a couple of people who are developers, installing something on your website's hard, right? You've got to go to the marketing team, and some developers got to do it. They don't know why or how, and they install it in the wrong place, and plus it's a big barrier. It's like, hey, go to your website and install this JavaScript. And if you can't do that right then, it's like, all right, well, I guess, I got to go and do something else. I'd much rather do other things. So what we've done is we took a range of the ways that you install Intercom, and as opposed to dragging you through a settings screen, we'd take a photo of your website and mock up the little Intercom launcher on the side, and you'd change it. You'd change the color of it. You haven't done any JavaScript installation. It's not on your site, but all of a sudden it's something you can sort of like show to your boss, or it feels very real, and it's much more motivating for like why you should install this JavaScript snippet rather than this whole bunch of code that like has some sort of vague kind of an abstract promise. What we also found is that we added a whole lot of steps, right? So we initially thought, well, shortest path to value, let's get the JavaScript snippet up front. I think we added like 30 screens or something before the JavaScript installation. The reality is that's a really big ask of people, right? If I said, hey, I got this new product you've never heard of, just go ahead and install that on your website. It's actually a lot to ask, right? And so instead what we would do is we'd take you through without installation all the configuration and all the things that you can do with Intercom. So if it's for the sales use case, it's like, cool, let's set up the launcher, let's choose the color, let's set up the routing rules. Do you have Salesforce? Great, we can integrate with that, right? You probably don't set it up at that point, but you will you'll know that we kind of have that, right? We're sort of proving that we kind of do that. And while we added a whole lot before the JavaScript installation, we actually saw installation rates went up because we provided more context to people before asking them to go and do this like quite kind of serious piece. Yeah, so it's not always sort of shortest path to value. So
I was wondering, what are your thoughts on, for a first time interaction of a user with an application, showing like tooltips and speech bubbles over certain buttons saying, this can do this, click next, and then it shows another tooltip over another sort of feature?
So I'd separate that into kind of two parts, right? One is, are tooltips an effective way to kind of guide people to the UI? Possibly. But I think what they can often wind up in is sort of the anti-pattern I guess I'm sort of speaking directly against, which is like, hello, welcome to Intercom. We can do this in the settings and this in the settings, and here's messages, and we've got a chat window, and you can do this, change the color here. And it's like, whoa, like, I just was sort of vaguely interested in this promise you had on your website. Like, how does all that tie into the thing that, like, I actually wanted to do? So if you can really focus a little bit like the map example on like, hey, first we're going to get you to do this thing and then click here and do that. That's really helpful, but if you end up in like just product tour land, you'll likely find it's a little less effective.
Great presentation. I was just
Thanks.
wondering, like, do you guys use any heat mapping tools like Hotjar or to track like user clicks, movements?
Yeah, we do actually use Hotjar on parts of the product. I'd say that there's sort of no one silver bullet here. Like, Hotjar is cool to see where people click, but the next question is like, all right, everyone's clicking over there. Like, why are they doing that? All roads typically wind up actually going and talking to people. And so a lot of the insights that kind of led us to really change the way that we do sort of new user onboarding came from actually talking to customers. And it's not actually all that sort of difficult. It's not like, different, you talk to 10 people and they say sort of different things. A lot of those insights around what salespeople care about, you talk to 5 salespeople, you'll figure that out really quickly. Talk to anyone who's worked in sales. They're like, yeah, keep the team efficient, got to get the leads, but they've got to be high quality, right? So pretty quickly you can start to figure out, we should be showing them those parts of the product rather than necessarily taking them through everything else. So I don't think like analytics or one thing is the answer. And generally the highest return will be actually talking to customers, because that's how you understand, whatever our solution is, we've got to get them to, I know the job that I have to prove to them, and I know the benefits, and so we've got to try different ways to like explain that to people. Yeah.
On a marketing side, I think for you guys it's Intercom.io.
Yeah.
I would imagine you have different feature pages. I think I've seen there's like 3 different pages.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you talked about how you want to really dig into the why and how this helps the customer.
Yeah.
But I know in my experience, I'm hesitant to leave features off, especially if you've worked a lot of time like building this, what you think is like a great feature, and you want the customer to go away going, damn, like I know everything about this. What do you think about like, should you leave stuff off even if it hurts?
Yeah. Yes is the short answer. Customers don't care. Like, it's great that you have that feature, and if you go back to our map, there's all this cool stuff in the map that we built. Look, you can filter the stuff, and you can, choose different users, all this stuff. No one cared. They didn't use it. It was not what it was. The other part is, even if they do care, let me get the map here. Even if they do care, like, someone's just signed up, right? And there's this whole long process that you're going to take them through, but all you've got to do is get them to the next screen. So it's like, what's the most burning thing that you guys do? Like, I know you've got this sort of cool other extra feature, and we can talk about that like week 3, or that's for power users or something, but just fundamentally, I prove to you really quickly that I'm going to help the marketing team, engage more customers in an easy way. What's the sort of biggest guns I have for that? As to whether you have a big feature list on the website, look, different customers, there's always a place for like the full kind of feature list. Some customers will want that, but you'll see that most sort of companies, especially software companies, tend to find their way to websites that like pretty much just push you into a kind of trial or a demo or sort of something like that. So, the odds that everyone will kind of read that is very low, and certainly in your first use experience, you should assume that people know almost nothing about your product. I would not assume that they've read the whole website. Yeah. So.
When you were mentioning before around understanding the customer deeply would probably bring the most amount of value and talking to customers.
Yeah.
What kind of line of questioning do you follow when you're talking to them, say, on the phone? Is it really centered around the job to be done, or is it some other method?
Yep, absolutely. Really, when you're trying to unpack the job to be done, why is your best friend? Like, why? Because customers and almost everyone else that's not a sort of product person or a founder will typically think in solutions. You should add a thing to the map. You should have a Twitter button on the map. I need a full screen mode for the map. And the answer to which is like, why? Like, why do we need a map? Why would we or why do we need like a Twitter button? They'll go, oh, well, like actually, I use this to sort of share with other people. Or, oh, I want to do this thing. And the solution that they come up with may not necessarily be the best way to do that, but really digging into like, why do you want to do that, and how else might you get about that? The other methodology that can be quite helpful in understanding jobs to be done is what's called a switch script interview. If you kind of look online around the work that Bob Moesta and the Rewired group have done, they'll talk about the switch script, because basically it's like everyone that comes to your website, something actually pretty important has happened, right? Because they're going about their day happily for many, many years, then all of a sudden, one morning, they took the effort to go searching for something, and something happened. Something changed. There was some sort of shift that happened to them that they're like, you know what, now I need a much better way to talk to my customers. And if you can understand what happens in there, those kind of motivations, then it's sort of like having a superpower. Because if you know what your customers want to do, then you just keep iterating on different ways to do it. But you sort of know what you're doing, right? If we know that people just want to impress investors and all that kind of stuff, we can just keep going, right? This might do it. There might be another way to do it, but you can be very confident. Look, we know people want to do this thing. As it happened, we actually scrapped this feature because we were like, you know what? Impressing people is not central to what Intercom does, which is why you won't find the map in the product anymore. But like understanding the motivation makes it actually much, much easier to make some of those kind of decisions. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about your user engagement strategies, so sort of post that initial onboard, like they're a paying customer, and getting to that highly active power user that you spoke of. Any strategies that or like low-hanging fruit that you found quite effective there?
Yeah, I think that the stuff that we talked about around onboarding everyone is really important. So likely the individual salespeople are not, kind of buying Intercom, but it's really important that we win them, right? It's one thing if their boss says, look, we're doing Intercom now and you've got to use it, but it's actually a whole lot better if they're pretty invested in the product. So really thinking about the users, which are often sort of forgotten in business software. The other thing I'd say is really thinking about non-product tasks. So in my custom bot example, it's like, oh, to use a custom bot, you just need to design a flow that you want to interact with your users, and then you click here to get started. And it's like, whoa, hang on. Design a flow for how we want to interact with our users? That's pretty hard, right? What questions should I ask? Should I have 3 options or 2 options? Or is typing a number harder? Or there's a whole assumption in that part. And so many products just gloss over it. Like, oh yeah, write some copy or do whatever. And you're like, well, how do I write that copy? It's not really part of the product, but how can we teach people, provide them with good defaults, or say here's write some copy. It should be 2 sentences, or start with a greeting, or any kind of nudges that you can kind of do to make it easier. And SurveyMonkey is the classic example of this, right? And I imagine you guys have the same thing. Everyone wants to do a survey. Everyone knows the right way to do a survey. Everyone knows that they don't know the right way to do a survey. Everyone's kind of worried. They know there's some sort of bias in questions. They don't know how long it should be. Are the questions right? And the more that you can do to reassure people and guide them through that process, that's what's going to kind of get them into that highly engaged part beyond that sort of first experience, which should be quite kind of light, right? If I've got you in and you're like, all right, I get this. I see the value of Intercom. I want all these things. I want the $3,054 from Airbnb. Then I can say, I'm going to need you to take some really beautiful photos of your house. You probably need 7. The main areas are important. Try and do it in a well-lit area, all that kind of stuff, right? But if I just go, all right, cool, Airbnb, it's going to be great. I'm going to need a whole lot of photos. You're going to see much more drop-off. Okay, I think that's us. Glad to chat to people after this as well. We have a little booth downstairs as well. We'd be glad to talk to you. Thank you very much for having me.